She said, "No man wants me," her voice heavy with the weight of years spent believing she wasn't enough. But when the cowboy looked her in the eye and answered, "I've been waiting just for you," it left only one question: wasn't she the very love he'd been searching for all along? The sentence left her mouth like a confession she wished the wind would carry away. "No man wants me." Leora Vance didn't mean to say it out loud. Not in front of the saloon's open doorway, where Juniper's notch could hear everything that wasn't their business and make it so. She kept her chin tucked, hat brim low, hands tight around a purse that never had enough in it. She moved like someone who'd learned to take up less space because the world punished her when she didn't. Inside, laughter clinked off glasses. Outside, the noon sun made layers of shadows. There was nowhere for a woman's shame to hide. Leora fixed on the water trough across the street, pretending she'd come for a drink. She hadn't. She'd come because loneliness has a way of pushing you outdoors, as if the horizon itself might answer back. He saw her before she noticed him, Cassian Pike. Reins loose in one hand, and the stillness of a man who'd spent years listening more than speaking. A fellow could live quite out here, if he knew how to be useful, and Cassian had always been useful. He'd built corrals and fences and reputations that held, but the one thing he never built was a halfway promise. His gaze settled on the woman, who thought no one was looking. Leora's dress was patched, neat, not pretty. A faded scar, a thin pale thread ran from ear to jaw, the kind that set tongues wagging and pitying. She tilted her face away when two men came out of the saloon. Their laughter snagged on her like burrs. She braced for the remark that always came. "Don't you boys have posts to lean on that ain't a person?" Cassian said, casual as a breeze that sets dust to moving. The men glanced at him, shrugged, drifted off. He dismounted without hurry, led his horse to the trough, gave the animal water first, then tipped his hat at Leora. "Afternoon, ma'am." "Don't waste your manners," she murmured. "They don't stick to me." He studied the way her hands trembled and went still. "They do if you let 'em. I've left a lot of things. None of 'em stayed." The town made a sport of ranking people's worth. Juniper's notch loved a winner and loved a good put-down even more. You learn quickly which eyes you can meet and which doors you shouldn't knock. Leora had knocked once too often, on the wrong life, the wrong man, the wrong promises. It had taught her to stop knocking at all. Cassian didn't argue. He simply took off his hat and set it against the trough's rim, the gesture unarmed and ordinary, as if to say, "I'm not here to win anything off you." "My name's Cassian Pike," he said. "I've got a ranch out past the Juniper Ridge, fences that need mending, coffee that ain't half bad." She searched his face, found no pity there, which unsettled her more than mockery. "Are you offering me work?" "Offering you a place to stand while you decide what you want," he said. Her throat tightened. The old answer rose, "No man wants me," and died under the weight of something gentler in his eyes. Drop a quick comment before we ride on. Do you believe true love finds us when we stop chasing it? Or does it find us because we keep showing up anyway? She almost stepped back. Instead, she nodded once. Cassian took up his hat, and the day shifted by a degree only people who've been cold for a long time can feel. Tease. The town's whispers travel faster than any horse. The next ones are aimed to make her turn around. Cassian spent years learning the language of quiet things, stalk that spook at shadows, gates that sing when the wind's wrong, storms that announce themselves with a smell like torn sage. Waiting, when you do it honestly, is a craft. He'd waited through winters for calves to drop, waited through springs for grass to fill out, and waited through long evenings for a woman whose voice he'd only heard once, in passing, when she told the shopkeeper she'd pay what she owed, just not today. He remembered that voice. Not pleading, not proud, just tired. Folks said Cassian could have married 3 times over, and twice as well, if he'd wanted. The widows at church made bread he never took. and his hired hands kept telling him of sisters and cousins who were easy on the eyes, boss. He'd smile, grunt, and ride the fence alone, until the talk straggled and quit. When he saw Leora outside the saloon, words like his didn't seem built for words like hers. He worked around that. "I could use a stitcher," he said, as they crossed Main and let Juniper's notch gawk. "Saddles, blankets, the odd shirt that keeps losing a button at the worst time. Everything I touch frays," she said. "Then we'll teach it to hold." They passed the mercantile. Mrs. Dallam's eyes narrowed. "Pike," she called, "your taste is slipping." Cassian didn't stop. "My taste is particular." Leora walked faster, then slowed, as if the ground might crack if she hurried. "You don't even know me." "I know what a person looks like when they've been told to make themselves small," he said. "And I know what happens when they forget how." They reached his wagon, hitched down by the livery. He didn't help her up. He put his hand out and let her choose. She chose. The ride to the Pike place ran between sage and sky. Leora counted fence posts to keep her breath steady. He told her about the windmill, how it squeaked when the bearing dried out, how he'd climb it with a coffee can of grease and a prayer. He told her about a mare named Bramble who hated everyone but the one kid down the road who fed her carrots through the fence slats. He didn't tell her that for 2 years he'd come to town only when he knew she was likely to be there: laundry day, flower day, the day she left a loaf of bread she'd baked for the preacher's sick wife, and slipped away before thanks could find her. At the turn to his land, her breath changed. The Pike Ranch didn't loom. It settled a long, low house, a barn with a roof that had lived through 5 hailstorms, and a line of cottonwoods that made shade like a promise kept. "It's quiet," she said. "Quiet is where the truth gets loud enough to hear," Cassian said, drawing the team to a stop. He didn't ask her to step down. Leora did, slowly, like a person approaching a chapel. Somewhere far off, a hawk cut the sky and wrote her name where nobody could erase it. Tease, a town that feeds on whispers, won't go hungry. Tomorrow, the first stone's already in someone's hand. Night lays out the ledger of a life, and Leora's had too many entries under owed. She lay on the narrow bed Cassian made up in the small room off the kitchen. Clean quilt, basin of water, bar of lye soap, one window that framed a single star, and counted the times she'd been told to leave. Her aunt's place in Barclay Flats, when money got thin. The boarding house that preferred pretty over capable. The man who said he liked her, until he learned her laugh had an echo of grief in it. Her scar, a souvenir from a splintered bottle, and a fast apology had healed. People still looked at it, like it bled. The morning started with coffee and a skillet of eggs. She tried to refuse and failed to resist. Cassian ate like a man who thanked his food, even when he forgot the blessing. "You don't have to explain a thing," he said, handing her a mug. "I've got a ledger of mistakes," she said. "Then we'll start a new book," he replied, "or learn to read the old one differently." He showed her the mending he'd piled up: saddle skirts frayed where stirrup leathers rubbed, a wool blanket that had gone thin in the middle, shirts with elbows blown from too much reaching. Leora's hands remembered how to fix things. That part of her had never deserted her, even when people had. She threaded a needle in one smooth motion and stitched with the kind of patience only hard seasons teach. At noon, they ate beans and talked like two people who didn't trust each other yet. In town, Mrs. Dallam told 2 customers Leora had moved in with Pike, and by supper, the story carried new features, some of them ugly, most of them familiar. At the pump, a drifter asked Cassian if he'd taken pity on the scarred one. Cassian stared so long, the man flushed and looked away. Later, Leora stepped out beneath the cottonwoods and let wind thread her hair. Cassian joined her, not too close. "You're safe here," he said. "Not because of me. Because the truth doesn't owe gossip a thing." "Gossip collects anyway," she said. "Let it stand at the gate," he answered. It doesn't get a seat at my table. She glanced at the house, the barn, the fence line. She could just make out a geometry of protection. Why are you doing this? She asked. He considered the question like he'd been waiting years for the right time to answer. Because I told myself not to make a move until I could make the right one, he said. Waiting's no virtue unless it's for the right person. She swallowed. The old words crowded her throat. No man wants me, but they were losing shape. She tucked them back in her pocket, where useless things belong. Tease. Tomorrow, Juniper's notch sends its first test a kindness, dressed up as cruelty. The next day demanded flour. You can't bake bread out of talk. So Cassian hitched the team and asked, not told, if Leora wanted to come. She did. Chin high, hat low, stitches in her pocket like courage you can touch. Juniper's notch practiced its smile before it saw you and wore another one behind your back. Leora felt every look the way a horse feels a rattler in the grass through hooves before ears. At the mercantile counter, Mrs. Dallum weighed 2 pounds as if she were tallying up sins. A new situation suits you? The woman asked. Voice soft, blade sharp. Flour doesn't ask where it's stored, Leora said gently. Just who'll make it into something worth sharing. Dallum's mouth pinched. Behind Leora, a ranch hand stage whispered to his friend, Pike's charity project sure does talk pretty. The friend chuckled. Cassian didn't turn. Boys, he said, there's a post driver and a mile of fence on my place that could use that extra energy, unless you'd rather keep exercising your tongues. Leora waited for the part where he'd avert his eyes, embarrassed to defend her. He didn't. He signed the ledger, tipped his hat at the room as if it hadn't been ugly, and opened the door with a palm that said, ladies first, without saying anything at all. Outside, the sun cut clean lines across Maine. Leora stood in it like a woman testing the feel of warmth that wasn't going to be snatched away. You'll make enemies, she said. I've had worse, he said. Busted cinches, wild bulls, night loneliness. Night loneliness is a kind of enemy, and I'm done letting it win. As they loaded the flour, a woman Leora recognized from church slipped close. If you ever need a place for a night, she began, voice honeyed. I mean, when this thing of yours runs out. Leora blinked, almost laughed. Ma'am, thank you kindly, she said, but I don't keep a packed bag anymore. The woman blinked, disappointed she couldn't be the rescuer she'd rehearsed. She drifted away. Back at the ranch, Leora kneaded dough until the heel of her hand pressed out the last of the morning's barbs. Cassian chopped kindling and stacked it near but not too near, a man who understood the width of another person's breath. When the bread came out golden, cracking, he bit in and closed his eyes. Best I've had, he said, and I've seen a few miles of bread. You don't have to say that. Don't say what you don't mean. Don't swallow what you should say. That's my policy. The day cooled, the whispering didn't die. But inside the Pike house, another kind of talk began to grow slow, steady, thick as stew. Tease. Secrets have long legs. One of Cassian's is about to cross the room. Supper was stew, bread, and silence that wasn't awkward, just careful. Cassian broke it with a single sentence. I heard you sing once. Leora, halfway to lifting her spoon, stopped. No, you didn't. The church social 3 summers back, he said. You waited till the hymn finished and the hall emptied. Then you tried the second verse, soft, like you were checking if the boards would hold you. They did. She stared. Why tell me that now? Because waiting doesn't mean silence. It means not pushing what's not ready. He rested his elbows on the table, fingers laced. I could have spoken to you then. I didn't trust my timing. I was still more lonesome than steady. I made a promise to myself. When I come to you, I won't come halfway. She set down her spoon. Is that what this is? A man rescuing a story that's better on paper than in the living? He shook his head. I don't want to fix you, Leora. I want to stand next to you while you fix what other people broke. And I want to be honest about my own breaks. What breaks? He almost smiled. I stayed when I should have left. I left when I should have stayed. I learned to make fences before I learned to open gates. He tapped his chest. And I waited so long for the right voice I forgot how to clear mine. He swallowed. So here I am, clearing it. And if I'm not the right voice, I'll know, he said quietly. And I'll still be grateful you sang. The lamp hissed as it pulled light out of oil. Outside, coyotes stitched the edges of the night with small, sharp sounds. Leora looked at the scarred table, the nick where a knife had missed its mark, the place where a coffee cup had been set too many times. I don't trust easy, she said. Good, he answered. Trust is easy to break. She looked up, met his eyes, saw a steadiness that didn't demand anything from her that she wasn't ready to give. I'm tired of being a lesson for other people's moral stories, she said. Either the warning or the miracle. You're a person, he said. You get to be a person. She breathed in, out. For the first time in a long while, the room felt like it had more air in it than she needed, like someone else was sharing the weight of breathing. Tease. A knock at the door can carry 1,000 miles of backroads. One is coming with Leora's name on it. The knock came at dawn, when the sky was the color of wet tin. Bramble snorted in the corral. The cottonwoods rustled their warning. Cassian wiped his hands on a towel and went to the door. Leora stood behind him, a thread and needle poised in her fingers, like a woman who'd survived on small defenses. On the porch, Mason Harrow, the man who had once promised Leora the moon and given her a tin button, then called it silver. He'd filled telegrams with sugar, and days with absence. He'd been the kind to tip his hat to every woman, and never mean it for any. He looked older, not better. Leora, he said, as if her name belonged to him. She didn't step forward. Mason, I heard you were set up here, he said, eyeing Cassian's boots, the doorframe, the life he hadn't earned. I came to fetch you back. Cassian leaned a shoulder against the jamb, the picture of ease. Fetch is for calves, he said. Mason's eyes hardened. This is between me and the lady. Leora's hand went steady. Then say what you came to say without measuring another man's house, she replied. A flicker of pride moved through Cassian's chest. He kept it there. Mason smirked. You always did dress up small things as big ones. Leora, He paused, rearranged his mouth into tender. I made mistakes. I've got a bunkhouse now, a cook, a payroll. I can provide. Folks will stop talking when you stand where you should. Where should I go? She repeated. Beside a man who's got means, he said, glancing at Cassian like the word might not apply here. Not skulking around the edges like a stray. Cassian said nothing. Leora did. I am not a stray, she said, voice clear. Hands empty now, needle set down. And I won't be a man's reputation scrub brush. Mason's nostrils flared. Don't be foolish, girl. Pride doesn't warm a bed. No, Cassian said, finally moving. But respect will warm a whole life. Mason scoffed. You think you've won something here. Cassian shook his head. I'm not competing with you, son. You're racing yourself. Silence fanned out between them. Wind ran a hand through the cottonwoods. Mason looked at Leora again, searching for the old uncertainty he used to press like a bruise. He didn't find it. Suit yourself, he said, bitterness leaking. Juniper's notch has a long memory. Leora nodded once. So do I. When he left, the day felt taller. Cassian lifted the coffee pot without comment and poured her a cup. She held it, hands steady, the steam braiding with her breath, in a way that looked like peace learning its way home. Tease. The town's next blow won't come by fist or knock. It'll come on a tongue sharpened to cut. Belonging isn't declared. It's practiced. Cassian went about it plain. He brought Leora to the south pasture and showed her the line where his land ended and the neighbors began, not to limit her, but to show the shape of the place she had a right to use. That cottonwood, he said. Ours. Shades free to anybody who asks. He gave her the key to the cellar. Storms don't schedule. If I'm out and you hear mean wind, you don't wait for me to tell you to be safe. He chalked her name on a hook by the door, Lyora, so her shawl didn't have to share a peg like she was a visitor. He asked what kind of bread she liked, and bought molasses, because she told him once she missed the taste of it. He taught her Bramble's quirks, and listened to her talk about a book she'd loved as a girl, pages so worn, the story had to be remembered when the paper couldn't hold it anymore. Juniper's notch didn't like this quiet kind of claiming. It preferred a show, so it made one. At the smithy, a comment grew longer legs. Pike's playing husband, someone said. She's playing house. Lyora heard it on her way to fetch salt. Her jaw tightened, and for a second, the sky went close again. Back at the ranch, she set the salt down and didn't move. Cassian noticed. Say it, he invited. They think I'm a costume, she murmured. That if they wait, the seams will split, and the real me will fall out ugly and unfit. He didn't argue with ghosts she hadn't finished burying. He handed her a coil of rope instead. You know how to tie a halter without looking? He asked. Used to, she said. Show me. She did, fingers memoried, rope singing against her palm. When she finished, the knot sat sure. Cassian nodded. That's a good piece of truth, he said. Something you know. What good is a knot to a room full of mouths? Everything in this life worth living is tied to something that holds, he said. Let gossips learn to rope before they speak. That night, the bread rose high and brown, and the house smelled like somebody's mother had decided to stay. Lyora sang while she washed the bowl soft. Second verse, the way he'd remembered. Cassian didn't say a word. He listened, and the walls leaned in to hear. Tease. When doubt has fewer places to hide, it tries the loudest one public humiliation. The harvest fair turned Juniper's notch into a noisy kindness pie tables and fiddle tunes and a prize for the tallest sunflower. Cassian's men brought apples. Lyora brought 3 loaves and the quiet wish to be ordinary. Mason Harrow brought his mouth. He waited until the judging, until half the town gathered around a long plank table. Lyora, he called, loud enough, you always were good at feeding a man. Shame about the rest. A hush fell the way a storm does fast. Mean. Lyora felt the old heat climb her neck, the kind that tells you, run, run. She steadied anyway. Enjoy the bread, Mason, she said calmly. It'll be the best thing you put in your mouth today. Laughter came from corners that surprised her. A few faces turned away, ashamed of the man, not the woman. But others snickered, eager for blood. One woman leaned to another. She thinks she's Mrs. Pike already. Cassian stepped forward then, not to loom but to plant. Folks, he said, voice unraised and clear as creek water, I've known storms that blew through quieter. If you come to judge bread, judge bread. If you come to judge people, you'll go home hungry. A judge cleared his throat, flustered, and sliced Lyora's loaf. The knife met crust, steam rose. The crumb looked like a field well plowed. He chewed, eyes widening. Blue ribbon, he declared, almost indignant at his own honesty. By a mile. The ribbon was cotton and dye. The thing it tied up was bigger. Lyora pinned it to the tablecloth, not her dress. She didn't gloat. She stood there like a woman practicing how not to flinch. Later, away from the fair's noise, she let herself sag against the cottonwood shade. I'm tired of proving I deserve the oxygen I take, she said. Cassian's hat tipped back, eyes on the leaves. Then stop, he said. She blinked. And do what? Live, he said. Let the proof be the bread on people's tongues, the fences that don't fall, the songs that find their second verse. She exhaled, long, like a promise leaving her and coming back as air. I'm afraid I'll ruin your life, she whispered. You can't ruin what you didn't build alone, he replied. And you didn't build me. Tease. A choice is a doorway. Lyora's about to put her hand on the latch. The church bell called both the righteous and the restless. On Sunday, Leora wore the dress she could afford and the dignity she'd earned. She and Cassian took a pew near the back, the place for people who like to listen without being seen. The sermon trailed off into something about forgiveness that made a few folks glance her way as if forgiveness were hers to figure out for everyone. After, on the steps, Mason tried again. "Reverend," he called out loud, "don't you think it's high time to speak plainly on the matter of a woman living with a man without vows binding it?" The Reverend blanched. He glanced at Cassian, then at Leora, then at his notes like they might sprout courage. The crowd tightened around curiosity. Cassian didn't make the preacher do his work. He stepped forward, shoulders square, hat in hand. "I'll speak plain," he said. "I've been waiting years, not days, for the right woman. Not a woman to fix or flaunt. The right one. That woman is Leora Vance. I've said nothing, because saying nothing was the way to protect what was still growing. If any of you feel a need to throw stones, throw 'em at me." Silence opened and waited. A child coughed. Somewhere a dog barked at the wrong time and made 3 people jump. Cassian turned to Leora, not the crowd. "I've wanted to say this to you. Not here, not now, but I won't let cowards script our moment. I don't want you because the town approves or because the ledger looks good. I want you because when you walk into a room, the drafts I've been living on turn into air. I want you because your hands tell the truth, even when your mouth's too tired to. I want you because I waited, and you're the one who arrived." He didn't kneel. He didn't reach. He simply stood inside his words, like a man who'd built them true. Leora's throat closed around every year she'd swallowed down. Someone in the crowd sniffed, annoyed they weren't getting a scandal. Someone else said, softly, "Well." Leora found her voice. "I believed I was the last pick in a game I didn't want to play," she said, eyes bright. "You make me forget there was ever a game." Mason muttered, "Performance," and stomped toward his horse, which shied like it had better judgment than its owner. The Reverend cleared his throat, as if receiving a permission he hadn't asked for. We'll have a potluck next week," he said, absurd in the best way. Laughter bubbled up, breaking the tensions back. Cassian tipped his hat at Leora. Nothing fancy. Everything honest. The town didn't vanish. It just got quieter. Tease. Words can plant a field. Now the harvest vows. Or fear waits on weather and will. Healing isn't a thunderclap. It's a cup of water refilled before it's empty. Leora kept on mending saddle skirts, shirts, edges of herself. Cassian kept on bringing home the small proofs. A ribbon of blue thread, the exact color she'd liked as a girl. A book whose second verse she'd sung. A nameplate he'd carved for the door Vance and Pike, set on the inside of the frame, so only those who belonged read it. They didn't speak vows overnight. They learned each other's weather first. Leora hated sudden knocks. Cassian announced himself softly when he came in from chores. Cassian's jaw clenched when he was calculating. Leora, instead of assuming anger, asked what numbers were fighting in his head. He'd smirk and show her a broken figure 8 that needed to be a 9. She'd fix the math with the same sure hands she fixed cloth. Some evenings she sang, full voice now, second verse and third. He'd sit on the step, boots muddy, and let the sound rinse the dust from the day. Some mornings, he read aloud while she kneaded the psalms, a newspaper editorial that made them both snort, a letter from a cousin back east who still thought Wyoming was a myth. The scar along Leora's jaw softened into a thing that belonged to her story, instead of a signpost pointed at shame. Once, in town, a child asked without malice, "Does it hurt?" Leora knelt, smiled. "Not anymore," she said. The child nodded, satisfied, and told her she had the prettiest braid in Juniper's notch. 3 women heard and had no choice but to agree. Cassian brought her to the South Ridge at sunset, where the world looked poured rather than built. "When I waited," he said, I think I was waiting for this standing next to someone for whom this is enough. It's more than enough, she said. It's the first thing that ever felt like mine. He didn't ask then. He let the sky finish its work. He let the cottonwoods sign in the wind. He let her hand rest on his arm, as if it had always known the way there. That night she tucked her ribbon in a drawer with a note, "Today I believed it. Tomorrow I will believe it faster." Tease. A last question remains. Not for the town, not for the past, for their future. Morning always finds the truth where it slept. Cassian saddled Bramble and a gentler mare for Leora, then led both to the gate. "Ride?" he asked. They took the long way, the cow path that skirts the creek, and then climbs to the ridge where the world declares itself. Leora's posture was easy now, not wary. Her hat sat at the angle of a person who could laugh without flinching. When they reached the shoulder of land where the wind paused to change its mind, Cassian swung down, tied reins, and faced her, the Juniper behind him like witnesses that didn't gossip. "I'm not good at speeches," he said. "I can build you a corral that'll stand 10 winters, and I can fix a pump blindfolded. But my tongue gets thick when my heart's got more to say than my mouth can carry." She smiled, half teasing. "That's a lot of words for a man who's bad at speeches." He laughed, shook his head, and his hands steady, nicked, honest held something small. Not gold, silver, plain, a band hammered carefully with the faintest line of juniper leaves etched around. "I had Jack the Smith help me," he said. "Told him it had to look like a thing that wouldn't lie." He didn't kneel. The ground between them had already done that work. "Leora Vance," he said, voice clear. "I waited because I wanted to walk into the rest of my days with the right person. I waited and found you. Will you marry me? Not because the town needs a headline, not because I need to be saved from loneliness, but because love isn't a rescue here, it's a partnership." Leora's eyes filled so fast, the ridge blurred. She saw, in the shimmering, the woman who whispered, "No man wants me," and the man who heard it without pity and set a place for her at his table anyway. She saw bread that rose, and fences that held. She saw the cottonwoods, and the windmill, and the chalked-on hook with her name. She saw the second verse, sung full. "Yes," she said. Then, again, because some words deserve to echo, "Yes." He slid the ring on. It didn't fix anything. It honored everything. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for 3 years, and finally got his air. She pressed her forehead to his and whispered, "I wasn't unwanted. I was waiting." They rode back slowly, and the town, when it found out, did what towns do. Some brought pies, some brought opinions, and a few finally brought apologies late and awkwardly. Leora took what was sincere and left the rest on the porch like stray papers for the wind to sort. The wedding was under the cottonwoods, with bread on the table and the ribbon tucked in her hair. The reverend kept the sermon short. The vows were longer in living than in speaking. When they kissed, a cheer rose that felt more like relief than spectacle, as if Juniper's notch had needed someone to prove a simple thing. Love doesn't fix what you're not. It holds what you are and helps you grow sturdy. That night, Leora set a new note in the drawer. "I am wanted not by the loud world, not by the whispering town, but by the right heart." The scar on her jaw glinted soft in lamplight, a line in a song that had learned its melody. If you thought these were crazy, you won't want to miss what happens in this next video.